यच्छन्ति देवाः सुन्वन्तं न स्वप्नाय स्पृहयन्ति.
Namaste and welcome to Swadeshi Indology Conference 5. I would like to thank Sri Swamiji, Mohandas Paiji, Dr. Krishnan, Dr. Nagaswamy, all the organizers who worked very hard, the brave scholars, not only subject matter experts but willing to stick their neck out, and all the attendees for participating in this important event. The Swadeshi Indology Conference series is something different than regular lit fests and conclaves and other conferences. You know, there are two kinds of discussions people can have. I will call one of them business to business, although we are not in the commercial world, and the other one is business to consumer. Business to business means experts talking to experts. Shastra experts discussing with each other rather than the public. Doctors at a conference discussing the latest techniques and science with each other, not talking to patients. Airbus or Boeing discussing with airlines that are also businesses about the latest in, aircraft, not talking to the general public who are flying. So business to business is a world of experts talking to each other in their own language. This is where radical, dramatic, fundamental change must happen. And then once you've changed the discourse at that level, you can take it to the other level, which is called business to consumer. So the Swadeshi Indology Conference is different than most of the conferences you guys might be familiar with because it's primarily a business-to-business conference. It's a conference where experts talk to each other rather than talking to the general public. So the purpose is not to speak to thousands of people. The purpose is to speak to a small number of experts, share ideas, and the output, our measure of success is we want to produce a game-changing book or series of books. So from our previous Swadeshi Indology Conference 1 and 2, we have put out 4 books and we're going to put out 3 more. And similarly for the rest of them. So the output of this is not huge impact on the general public, but a game-changing book. Then the launch of that book and the videos and the e-learning courses becomes more of a business-to-consumer event. I want to discuss the very serious problem of colonization of the Bhakti performing arts, the Bhakti performing arts. But before I do that, I want to talk about the general problem of colonization and decolonization. So what exactly is colonization? Let's talk about it. The colonizer is somebody who's captured a geography which has people that it has conquered, and these people have traditions, all sorts of assets, intellectual assets. So one of the things that colonizers tend to do is use their own lens to map the colony, map the geography, its people, its customs. So there's a very well-known Western Indologist called Benedict Anderson. He wrote an important book called Imagined Communities. And in this, he describes how the colonial project was largely a project of map making maps about the geography of what we've captured, what we've conquered. The French would map make their territories, and the British would do the maps of their territories. Everybody making maps, showing off back at home how much they've captured, sort of like taking inventory of all the assets that you've looted. It served the purpose of also knowing who these subjects are, how to control them, how to manage them, how to manipulate them. And then, then what would happen is this colonized map of the colony and its civilization would be exported back to the colonial people, and they would be told that this is really who you are. We are giving you your history. We are teaching you who you are. So they would feel very grateful that this colonial master is telling us about ourselves. They're upgrading us, making us more civilized, etc., because they are the ones who know more about us than we know. And then, of course, one can put sepoys, who are Indians working for the colonial enterprise, and they serve as useful idiots. Useful idiots in the sense that Some of them are doing it consciously. A lot of them are unconscious, that they are into self-destruction. And they are the ones who are carrying out this, the propagation of this colonized view of the colony and spreading it out to all sorts of, to other people in all sorts of ways, through textbooks, through talks, through media, through drama, music, theater, and so on. So there is this colonial enterprise where, we think it ended with the end of, with independence, political freedom, and so on. But the intellectual colonization has continued and becoming actually worse. And in a moment, I will explain to you that the intellectual colonization of Bhakti movement, of our spiritual traditions, actually has accelerated since the British left. And this is thanks to the left, the Indian left, the leftists. The leftists are continuing the legacy of the colonial lens, the colonial enterprise, because the colonizers put together a whole infrastructure for knowledge, for discourse development, both B2B, experts talking to each other, and then through media and various popular means, how to propagate it to the general public. And this apparatus, the left has taken over. In a sense, they are the successors of the colonizers, bringing a foreign lens, bringing a lens of a mixture of Christianity, Marxism, various breaking India type forces, not realizing that by doing all this, they're breaking down the Indian grand narrative bit by bit, and they're supporting the breaking India forces whether they admit it or not. I want to discuss the Bhakti performing arts. Bhakti, as you know, is devotion. But Bhakti, often we think there is a murti, which is made of stone or wood, and that's the divine presence. And we are having a process called Bhakti with it. But what about interactive Bhakti? Dance. Dancing with the divine. The divine could be in the form of a son, could be in the form of a brother, could be in the form of a guru, teacher, could be a lover, could be a friend. Different relationships that we have in ordinary life are also enacted, performed with the divine. And this is interactive, unlike a murti, which is not so interactive. But this is interactive. So this is a tradition very unique to us. This Bhakti performing arts is something not found in any other tradition, any of the other major religions that survive today at least. In Christianity, there is no performing arts of the Bible kind of thing. Or at least traditionally there hasn't been. Some people might be trying to have it now. Opera, which is the highest form of high-class, aristocratic, sophisticated Western theater. What is opera? Opera is the modernized old Greek theater. But this old Greek theater is pagan. That is the pagan religion Christianity wanted to get rid of and got rid of them. So after eliminating paganism, getting rid of the pagans, Christianizing them, finishing off their culture, burning down their temples, etc. Now, 1,000 years later, they realize that actually there is something very beautiful. So they are bringing back the Greek philosophy, and they're bringing back their old theater, modernizing it as opera. So this modernized pagan stuff, pagan culture, has been separated from the religious elements, secularized, because if they were to bring in the spirituality that they worshipped, goddess and all that, it would be a poison pill for Christianity, so that's kept out. This secularized, removing the sacred, excluding God, this kind of thing, expunging God out of it, turning it into more like a secular theater, putting it into museums, performances, etc. This is a safe way to domesticate a civilization that you've destroyed. You don't want to welcome it back and undo having gotten rid of them. So that's the closest you can say the West comes to something like Bhakti performing arts. So and my concern is that this is where our Bhakti performing arts might end up if we are not careful. And this is what today's conference is all about, because I see people like T.M. Krishna. T.M. Krishna are people who are doing to the Bhakti performing arts what the Christians did to the pagan performing arts and turned it into today's opera, which you can enjoy. It's high class, it's beautiful theater, But it's not about me, my relationship with the divine. It's not about that. There is no rasa. Those kinds of devotional elements are not there. And of course, in Islam, anything like a bhakti performing arts would be banned. The murti side totally banned. And imagine, even worse than murti is when I am the bhakta, I am actually embodying myself with divinity and performing a certain role. This is even worse than, murti puja. So don't think of any legitimate appropriation by Christian, Jewish or Islamic people of our bhakti tradition. So when they come learning, wanting to perform, it's either duplicitous because they're fooling us, it's a double-faced thing, or they're trying to learn, trying to perfect the technique so they can appropriate the parts that they need, or they're trying to propagate it to the masses, making it look like they also have this tradition, but at the end of the day, they've stripped it of our spirituality. So it's an important thing for you to know why bhakti is important to us, why the performing arts of bhakti are so important to us. Before you look at Carnatic music and what is happening to the sacred theater, the dance, the drama, the music, all of that, what is happening in the name of secularizing and post-modernizing this, you have to get a clear idea of this whole big picture. A very fashionable thing is postmodernism. It sounds very intellectual, and if you can quote one or two postmodernists, it makes you look like you're really a very intelligent person. One of the important ideas in postmodernism is that what they're calling the author is dead. Means somebody Valmiki wrote Ramayana, but Valmiki is dead. Whoever may have composed anything, they are dead. Meaning, what the author meant, what was his context, what was his intention, is irrelevant today. I, the interpreter, can do what I want. I can make it look how I want. I can superimpose the lens, the context, the way I look at it. So I can be a feminist and say this is a feminist view. And according to me, this is what Ramayana is saying, or whatever the text might be. So this post-modernization is a free-for-all. And hence we have people like Sheldon Pollock calling it human rights abuse, and people like Devdutt Patnaik calling it all myth. Now, the interesting thing is that they can say a lot of positive, nice things to keep fooling us. But remember one thing, and please note this, the lie which most closely resembles the truth is the most dangerous lie. Let me repeat. The lie which is resembling the truth very, very closely is the most dangerous one because it looks like it's true. And so this disguised, praise for our tradition, performing our tradition, funding our tradition, sponsoring our tradition, but deep inside, twisting the sacred element, replacing it with something else is quite a sinister thing. And this is what T.M. Krishna is doing to Carnatic music. So in the name of being objective, freedom, and of course saying things like, okay, it's all mithya anyway, so one interpretation is as good or bad as the other. In the name of that, what they're doing is reinterpreting things as Brahmanical oppression, gender oppression, caste oppression, minorityism, all these subaltern human rights lenses being projected as a way to interpret what was intended all along to be very sacred process for us. And this not only throws us off, but actually it disenfranchises the whole tradition and all the experts, and a new group of experts are born who are now going to take over your tradition and teach it to you in accordance with their ideas and their interpretation. So this is a very sneaky way of colonizing you without your having a problem with it. You think actually they're doing us a favor, very nice people, and they are helping us, and they are good in the arts, they sing very well, they dance very well, and all these people are trained to perfection. So they picked people with exceedingly high technique, an exceedingly high level of understanding, and really made them perfect as the tradition would perform, and then shifted the discourse, taken out the spiritual discourse, injected a new discourse, and turned them loose. This is why this whole enterprise of what's happening with Carnatic music, what you'll hear from our experts who are scholars on this subject, this is why it's so dangerous. This is similar to what's happening at Sabrimala and many other places like that. Sabrimala is turning into a museum, an art gallery, a tourist spot. So it'll be something where there's a lot of beauty being celebrated, what great art exists here, but the sacredness is gone. It's not Bhakti in action. It's not Bhakti in action. That's what their goal is there, and that's what the goal is in the major assault on Carnatic music today. Unfortunately, our culture ministry, which also has the Archaeological Survey of India under it, and all the archaeological sites, hasn't reversed the legal status, the official policy, which says that whatever comes under the Archaeological Survey of India jurisdiction and whatever they have to maintain, those are not living deities. They are not where there's any puja going on, there's no agama, there is no bhakti going on, no devotion allowed, not even allowed. I've been to some of these places and they'll tell you that, in fact, there's a part of the Shringeri temple. There's a part of the Shringeri temple, in the main temple, they will say you cannot do bhakti here because this is an archaeological site. So we've created a separate place where you can do your bhakti. This is even today the case. The important carvings, rock carvings at Mahabalipuram, same thing. I did during the 2005 tsunami, Swami Dayanand Saraswati sent me there, and we did a 3-month project there and made a documentary. And I found that those were all deities. At one point in time, this was an open-air temple, worshipped. A very poor man came and he was explaining that his forefathers were the pujaris, they were the priests there. And somebody translates his Tamil for my benefit, and we have it on camera. And he explains that this is a living temple until such time as the British turned this into an archaeological site, and the Indian government has continued. So actually it's a criminal offense. The guide warned us that if this guy is caught doing this arti, which he was doing, he could be prosecuted for trespassing with his religion and all that into a secular space. So the Ministry of Culture hasn't really understood that even the term archaeology means dead civilization. Archaeology is a study of dead civilization. It's like you mummify. If somebody came to me and wanted to compliment me and said, "Oh, you're a great mummy," I would say that you think I'm dead. So the same way, when somebody says that this is a great archaeological site, you should find it insulting. Because museums are where the conquerors would take the dead civilization of the conquered people and decorate themselves and feel very proud and put it up in a museum. Just like, you kill an animal and make a trophy out of the animal's head. That's not a great gift to the animal. Similarly, dead civilizations end up in museums, they end up as archaeological sites. So the risk we have is Carnatic music may end up as one of those things that are performed without the spiritual life, without the spiritual dimension. I'm also concerned Diwali may end up as a festival like, Halloween in the United States, which used to be a festival of the Wicca people, the pagan people who actually are called, their own name for themselves is Wicca, but the Christians call them pagan. It's their festival, which has turned into some kind of a rowdy, pop culture fun thing with no spiritual dimension in it. So if you don't want the Hindu dharma symbols, processes, performing arts, agamas, paintings, living deities, festivals, holidays, if you don't want all these things to turn into just sort of pop culture, tourism, theater, that sort of thing, then it is very important for you to support this project. It wasn't easy for us to assemble this team of scholars who are going to give their papers today, because we wanted people who are very good scholars in this subject matter, and many candidates that we thought would be very good actually declined because they're afraid to speak in public. I'm just telling you this to be very frank. Don't think this job is very easy, that, I know so-and-so, so-and-so, and they all come. They're not going to come. Because even if you give them all the incentives, you give them the argument, some are clearly sold out. They're on the other side. Their bread is buttered by people on the other side. They're not going to compromise. Some are playing this public versus private game. Publicly, they are saying one thing. Privately, it's the opposite. Some are genuinely on our side but don't have the courage. They are too scared to stick their neck out, and they will say, listen, I'll give you some tips here and there, but don't use my name. Very few are clear enough, knowledgeable enough, good writers, good researchers, and willing to stick their neck out, and I congratulate them for joining this. This is the beginnings of a home team. It's a small beginning. We want to turn this into a book. When the book comes out, it'll be a consumer event. It'll be a public event, because then we launch it in a big way. I want to thank all the dignitaries who are here. I want to thank all the sponsors, funding agencies, funding individuals who are here. And of course, most of all, I want to thank you, the scholars, because you are the home team. You are the intellectual Kshatriyas. We're very proud of you. Thank you very much.